Hi there, it's Dr. Gianna Reams. And this is going to be a short little video just in response to an interesting question that I got over on Tumblr, actually, where someone asked, they said they had read that Alexander needed to be loved, and they wanted to know if that was just, at a personal level with his friends, the public too, and if so, why? What did I think was the reason for that? And so I pondered it a little bit, and I was trying to figure out where, because she had heard or read, and I was trying to figure out where this might be coming from. It's not in our sources per se. It is a little bit in Plutarch, and I think maybe, possibly, where this got mediated was from Mary Renault. And certainly in her novels, she presents him that way. And also in her biography, The Nature of Alexander. I was hunting for it earlier, and I couldn't find any direct statement in there, but I seem to have this in my own mind connected to her. And so I wanted to address it in that I have heard it from other places, and I think that it is kind of a persistent idea about Alexander, that had this need for public approval. And a couple of thoughts on this. First, the problem with it. And the problem is we don't have anything that Alexander wrote. Certainly nothing personal, like a diary or even letters. Well, we do have some letters, most of them mediated through Plutarch, but many of these are summaries. Alexander wrote X. They don't give us Alexander's words. And in another video I did, in fact, one of the very first ones I did, Alexander never said that. I took on some popular quotes that are attributed to Alexander, and there I made the point that we don't have much that Alexander said himself. Just a fact of the sources that no personal writings from Alexander have come down to us. And as I've said several times, all of our surviving sources just about were written hundreds of years after he died. There are only a few that date to his own lifetime, like some material from Demosthenes and Hyperides and a couple of other Athenian orators. And there's an inscription or two, but these are not him writing anything down. Okay, so that's our problem with ever knowing for sure what Alexander thought or needed or wanted or any of that. The best we can do sometimes is to infer it from Alexander's behavior. And in some cases, I think that can be pretty solid. I mean, I don't think you'll get many arguments from anybody that Alexander was devastated by the death of Hippaean. That seems to have been agreed upon in antiquity and modernity. And again, we're just looking at his behavior and how he acted in the wake of Hippaean's death. And so I think that was a pretty safe guess. But in a lot of other things, including psychological analysis of what drove him or what he wanted at any one point, that's really, 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 really hard to say. And it's going to be speculation. And I think this is one of the reasons why we get so many different analyses of Alexander, is that we are missing anything he wrote. And it's always going to be how another individual reads your behavior. And I'm sure every single person out there has done something or said something at some point and had somebody else react to it in a way that utterly shocked them and surprised them, and they hear it in a different way than it was meant. Okay, and so this is one of the intrinsic problems of being, encased in human skin and not being telepathic. That we don't know a lot of times what other people feel or think. In terms of speculating and whether it comes from Renault or not, one of the things that novelists do and have to do, speaking as a novelist as well as a professional historian, is we have to make that leap. We have to speculate on that, not just what people did, but how they felt. And if you're any good, then you manage to convey that. And so certainly I have interpreted at points in Dancing with the Lion how I think Alexander felt, as does Mary Renault. And she did, I know in her novels, present him as somebody who needed approval from others and love from others and adoration from others. I'm not sure she's wrong, okay? But I also can't say for sure if she's right, okay? Because we just don't know. But whether or not, whatever Alexander personally, emotionally needed, a politician, and a king is a politician, needs support and followers who adore or at least like him or her. So from a purely political standpoint, Alexander absolutely needed people to adore him, or he wouldn't be able to survive as king. And I think looking at the historical record, that we can say that, yes, sure, the army got mad at him now and then, although I think some of the anger attributed is invented later, and we've discussed that before, like the Indus revolt. But certainly the one at Opus outside Babylon, that was real. Okay, the army had I'm hesitant to really call it a full-on mutiny, but certainly a revolt. And there are other points where it's clear that in the historical record that the army's not happy with him for this reason or that. But overall, go take a look at a map, folks. Look at how far he managed to drag that army who followed him through all kinds of terrain, all kinds of weather. And I'm reminding, as it's freezing cold outside, that in the foothills of the Hindu Kush, it was below zero much of the time. They followed him. And I think that's a testament to whether or not he needed it. Certainly he got respect, adoration, love from his soldiers. So that's a necessity for a king. It's a political necessity, not just maybe a psychological or emotional necessity. Did he need it in a psychological way? I don't know. Possibly. He seems to have taken his friendship seriously. I don't think a lot of this is made up. Now, there's a cynical crowd out there that does, and they see a lot of what he did as purely for his own advancement. And I think that both misunderstands the ancient world and also is perhaps needlessly cynical. Okay. He does genuinely seem to have had friendships and people who were loved him as well. So I don't know that that's a particularly helpful answer. It's hard to say if he had a greater than average need for adoration. Quite possibly. I think people who like the limelight do have a need at some level for affirmation from others. But it's difficult to say because we just don't have anything that Alexander wrote about his own personal thoughts and feelings. And that's kind of where we are stuck in ever trying to analyze Alexander's inner psychological world, if you will. So, as always, if you enjoy the content, please like, please subscribe, please tap the little bell so you get notifications. This spring's been very, very busy. I think a lot of Americans in particular have been feeling a lot of pressure and depression and other things about what's happening in the country. And I may do ancient history, but, I'm not immune to that. And so I haven't been making as many videos as I sometimes do. I've got another one I'd like to do in the future, nearer future, but it's going to kind of come and go. I've got a conference I'm going to in February, so that'll take up some of my time as well. But I'll get to it when I can. And as always, thank you for viewing and liking these videos.